All right, so hi guys. This is another non-art topic, kind of. It could be considered an art topic because I consider literature and movies an art form, but not many people do. Video! And it's also very, very freeform. I did not write notes for this. I was literally just working in my sketchbook, and it just in my head, like random things tend to do. And I really hope this audio is coming out okay. I've been having some issues with my voice recorder. I keep saying that I need to just invest eventually into one of those like portable little hand ones so I can walk around and I can, sit in my closet like most YouTubers do when they want quiet, but I can't have that luxury right now. So, we're going to talk about remakes. And this is going to be, I'm hoping, not too lengthy, but I have a lot of opinions on this. And I've had a lot of opinions on this for a very, very long time. Surprise, surprise, Michelle has opinions. Also, hi, if you're new here, I tend to do rambles, topics, questions to backdrops of me doing art or me coloring other friends / commissioners' art with permission. Hi, how are you? So, we're talking about remakes, reboots, and things like that. So, before we start, though, I should say that this is probably going to be a little bit all over the place if I haven't already said that. And if we had, then we could turn it into a drinking game. But my issue, like a lot of people's issues, is we are getting... So remakes, reboots, and retellings have been going on since forever. I am a horror movie fan, if you didn't know, and one of the most quintessential... I can't even say it. One of the most influential... I can't say the proper word I was trying to say. Movie that came out was The Thing. And a lot of people who are diehard horror fans don't actually know that that thing is a remake from a movie from, I believe, the 30s? 30s or 40s. I can't remember the exact date of the original one. But that's a remake. And they changed a lot, and they did a lot to it, and it is now recommended as a classic. Another really good example of a horror movie reboot done right, because to me there's a difference from a remake and a reboot. A reboot, to me, this, again, I'm not a film. I am not a film, student. I don't have a film degree. This is just from being an observer. So if I get some people in the comments, being like, well, actually, the technical... This is just from what I've learned. So nothing on you guys. Cool for you. This is how I see it. A reboot is very different than a remake. A remake, to me, is like when they remade the Psycho movie, where it was literally pretty much a shot-for-shot remake. Same thing would go for the Beauty and the Beast live-action remake, to where, yes, there were some added things in there, and I was actually a fan of the movie, but there were literally, if you're a fan of the animated movie, you could tell it was pretty much the exact same storyboards, the exact same beats, the exact same camera angles to the most part, to where this is a remake, not a reboot. To me, a reboot is when someone very clearly has a passion for this source material, for this story, for this blah, 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 and they want to do it in their own image. A good example of this, to me, which people will fight me on because I know this is also a controversial one, is the Evil Dead reboot that came out. I'm using horror movies because I'm a horror movie buff, and it's the easiest ones I can think at the top of my head, so if you don't like horror movies, I'll try to throw some live action ones in here if I can think of them that I'm not written down, and I probably should have. So, the Evil Dead reboot that came out a few years ago, I thought was great. I thought it was terrifying. I thought they fixed a lot of Sam Raimi's mistakes, which is also blasphemy in the horror community. No one ever can complain about John Carpenter or Sam Raimi or any of the other or what's his name, Rob Zombie, without getting some backlash, thrown at your way. When I'm a fan of their movies, but it's just, I believe that the original Evil Dead, Sam Raimi's Evil Dead, the original trilogy, because most people don't know it's a trilogy, he ended up remaking the first one in the Evil Dead 2, the original one with, Bruce Campbell and his girlfriend. which was very confusing for me because I wasn't alive in the 80s, and I believe the first one came out in the late 70s. I could be wrong there, but I know they came out in the 80s. So, to me, I remember it very clearly that me and my friend, we watched like all three of them. We watched the first one, and then like the next, I think I like spent like 3 days at her house, and then the next day we watched the second one, and then the last day we watched Army of Darkness. And so when we were watching them, we realized just how similar the second one was to the first one, and we were both very confused. And then we both realized, I don't know why it was called Evil Dead 2, because it literally was a remake of the first one, but it was very clearly Sam Raimi fixing his mistakes that he had made in the first one. It was a lot more comedic, which is a lot of his style. He's very like dark and gritty, but he's also very comedic. I mean, look at the original Spider-Man trilogy that came out. So you can see it in his camera work, in his writing, and his directing. And so, with that being done, when the Evil Dead reboot came out in the 2000s, I thought it was great. I remember watching it with my brother, and we didn't actually get to see it in theaters, which we were both bummed about. We got to see it on DVD, and oh my god, we were terrified. They had changed so many plot points to make sense for why they didn't leave the goddamn cabin. The Evil Dead was also one of the staples of the first, WTF moments of people being like, just get out of there. Just get out. Why are you waiting to get out? And then obviously, if you've seen the movie, that stuff happens to the car. But in the reboot, they made it so this is a group of friends, and instead of them being boyfriend-girlfriend, they made them siblings, and they changed Ash to being a girl, which was also the girl victim in the original, if you know what I'm talking about. And so they had it be where she was a drug addict, and she was trying to detox. And so when all the demon stuff is happening, and all the weird stuff is happening, at first, everyone is just like, she's just detoxing. We can't leave. Well, in the other one, when all the terrible stuff was happening, they were all just like, oh, you're so silly. No. I mean, clearly you're coming to us bleeding, broken, and bruised and screaming from the woods, but no, nothing happened. So, to me, that's when a reboot is done. Right, the classic is still there for the diehard fans who didn't want that, who they kind of missed that, the reboot was a horror movie. They missed the funny comedic parts in it. And then, one's like, well, you have that in the original, But there was also such a vast period of time between them. Think about it. The Evil Dead movies came out in the 80s. These movies came out in the 2000s. That's a big gap between times, But here we are. And another good, here's another good one I can think of is, I really liked, in my mind, I believe it was closer to a remake because it was closer to the book, but The Murder on the Orient Express. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was done beautifully. I thought it was a very good telling of the book, And then when I tried rewatching one of the classic ones, it was still good and it was still close to the book, but it just did not age well. It did not. And there are a lot of times that just happens too. And there's nothing wrong, in my opinion, when something is like that. Now let's talk about The Insurgents right now. So, another good example of me thinking that it's done right is the It reboot that came out in 2017 for part 1, and then the most recent one came out, in part 2. And I loved the changes. If you guys don't know, I'm a Stephen King fan, even if he's weird. And as a fan of anything, I never put anyone on a pedestal. If I believe personally, if you are a diehard fan of somebody, you need to accept their faults with their greatness, because they are people and people are flawed beings. And, I guess I should also say, I didn't watch the miniseries growing up. I just didn't. My mother was definitely not a horror fan. And my dad was. And my dad was not a big Cy King fan. I don't believe he's even read any of his books, which is also fine. Stephen King's books can be a little weird. But, when I read it, I remember really liking it. I liked that it took place in the 50s and then moved to the 80s. And, there were a lot of darker undertones in there. But you also can very much tell when the writer was on drugs. Again, any other Stephen King fan out there knows he was hardcore on drugs. So, I didn't really watch the miniseries. And then when I finally sat down and I saw people doing retrospectives of it, I had seen it obviously after I saw it chapter 1 because I didn't grow up around the miniseries. So I watched it. I watched the miniseries after reading the book, so I already knew all the plot things. And I remember being like, wow, they put a lot in here, but they also couldn't show a lot because it was and a lot of people don't know this, it was a made-for-TV movie miniseries. Same thing goes for the Shining movies. I hate The Shining. I hate it. It is my favorite book. Well, my second favorite, but it is one of my favorite books from Stephen King, and I hate the movie and I hate the miniseries. I think they're both terrible. But I also believe there are some books and stories that just cannot be adapted to film. A perfect example is, well, It. And the reason for that is I think why it did so well was because it is such a big story and it is going between the kid's story and the adult story. And if any of you guys have seen the second part, you know that it is nearly a 3-hour long movie. It is one very long boy, but I totally recommend it. To me, it wasn't as scary as the first one, but then again, neither was that part of the book. I thought it did a very good in-depth analysis of the characters. I liked what they changed with the characters because I'm not spoiling anything for anybody who still wants to see it or read the book, and to me, they fixed so many things that were wrong with the miniseries and the book, and even Stephen King himself praised it. This being said, we're going to talk about the Pet Sematary remake that I hated. So, again, never grew up on the miniseries because I just wasn't there at the time. Read the book, loved the book. Eventually watched the miniseries. I watched the movie. I don't know why I said miniseries. And again, for a product of the time, I thought it was great. I thought the practical effects were good. I understood the constraints they had to do because they actually used a toddler. Spoiler for evil stuff, but it's kind of like history. So if not, and you didn't somehow see the Pet Sematary trailer for the remake, one of the kids dies. But in the book, obviously the toddler did a lot more bad stuff and said a lot more bad stuff that they obviously couldn't do because they had a live action toddler actor, and that version of Gage did a great job. Like that's another big thing, is it was still very creepy and a very iconic thing. Same for, and there's controversy here, but same for the Zelda of that one. They went a lot of ways to make it very uncanny and unsettling the way Zelda was depicted in the book. And so then when the remake came out, I guess that's technically a reboot because they changed some things, but a lot of it was a remake. But I will call it a reboot by my own standards. So with the Pet Sematary reboot, I was excited and disappointed at the fact that they changed who the kid was. To me, I agreed with the writers when I first saw the trailer. I was angry because it was in a trailer that I didn't want to see, and I thought that would have been a really good plot twist for people who hadn't read the book or the movie to, not have it be on your poster or your trailer, let alone all of the scary parts in the movie into the thing. So I ended up not watching it, actually. I didn't have to, because the second it came out, I saw all the reviews and I saw people talking about it, and I watched spoiler talks. And do I plan on still watching it? Yeah. But not giving it a lot of money. I will gladly rent this movie to watch it. But from everything I heard and everything I'd seen, and I usually do not let stuff like that influence me, but I remember when the second trailer dropped, I thought the first trailer was perfect for the remake. I thought the reboot. I thought the trailer was ominous. It didn't give anything away. It was implying that something else was going to happen, and I was all for it. Cody was all for it. And then the second trailer came out, and you literally saw the entire movie in the trailer. Like, the entire movie. I saw every twist. I saw the famous Judd scene. I saw what they were doing. I saw the aspect they were going, and I just thought, why? Why did you do this? Maybe it's just me thinking this, but why? This also happened with, I will keep in mind, this movie I'm going to talk about is not a remake or reboot. This is a 100% original movie. Just weird. Same sort of thing happened with Midsommar. I saw Midsommar this summer, And wow, that was a dumpster fire, but it was a good dumpster fire. I loved that movie. I'm gonna buy it on Blu-ray when it comes out. It's nothing like Hereditary, even though it's by the same director. But when that came out, every single scare in the movie that's an actual scare, despite maybe the first thing in the very beginning, which was surprising, is in the trailer. Because it is much more, and Ari Aster openly said it's not a horror movie, it's a breakup story, I believe is what they said. I don't know Ari's gender. Don't want to assume. And so, with that being said, it was marketed as a horror movie. You slapped Hereditary all over it, when it was very much more a horror comedy, which is also fine if that's what it's intended, and you should let people know. A good example of a horror comedy that's also, I believe, I haven't fully seen it yet, so, call me on this. I believe it's Dead Never Die, the zombie comedy that was coming out this year. Or Dead Don't Stay Dead or something along those lines. That was marketed as a horror comedy. Very well, very easy, super simple, very good. And so then when you deal with that kind of thing, a lot of people end up not seeing original concepts, original things. Now, if anybody knows me personally, be like, well, Michelle, you like, retellings and stories and books. What's the difference? The difference is there, for every retelling, reimagining, blah, 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 in literature, in, novel form, in text, there's thousands of original stories published every year. Thousands. And that's just in the English ones. If you go worldwide and you read international books, you're getting even more. And obviously, those cannot always translate well to movies. But it bothers me that there are so many great stories out there, so many great writers and screenwriters and people who go to college for years or they study for years to make these original films and these original games and these original stories that get thrown to the wayside because we need another live action Disney movie. We need another live action, blah, blah, blah. We need another remake. We need another remake. We need another remake. And it's very clear. You can very clearly tell if you're a fan of storytelling, if you're a fan of movies and books and shows like I am, you can tell when something is a cash grab and something is very clearly a passion project. Another good horror movie I'm going to talk about where I liked the reboot because I thought it was vastly different than the original, but I know, again, a lot of horror fans did not like. I liked the Fright Night reboot. A lot of people called it a remake, but I'm like, they changed nearly everything in that movie to where they pretty much just kept the characters' names. And it was a whole new, different, original vampire movie. And if that's the case, it's like, well, why didn't they just make it? It's a whole new, original vampire movie. Exactly. That's my point here. We have these umbrella things where these people have these ideas and these instances and these inspirations and they want to do these stories, but where's the money? The money, which is what talks, is coming from nostalgia. It's why we're seeing this, especially now, we're seeing this huge 80s boom. Now, I was a 90s kid, but I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to call it. In the next 10 to 20 years, we're going to have a 90s nostalgia boom. It's going to happen. Because this 80s one is huge. And it's bothersome because I remember in the movies I grew up in, there were many movies that just took place in the time period it was in. Or if people really wanted a story to tell, they would do a period piece. And I love period pieces that are, before the 70s. A good imagining of a book to film was the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark movie. This will be the last thing, I swear to God. It's not a remake because it hasn't been a movie, but it is a telling of the stories from the books that I grew up with as a kid. Guillermo del Toro, which I believe, I don't know if he was the director, but I know he had a part in it. I think he was the producer. If not, he was definitely the director. But you could very tell this came from a place of passion. This came from heart. This came from, they had a vision for how they wanted to tell these short stories. And they went the extra mile and they made it a period piece. And in all the trailers, I did not get that at all. So when I went into the theater, and I'm sorry if that's a spoiler, when I got into the theater and it was taking place during I believe it was the Vietnam War, when that's happening, and we see our protagonists, and I was eating it up. I was eating it up. I ate the story. I ate the atmosphere. I ate everything. And I was so damn happy that this was something original being made. And there's my ramble rant on how I feel about reboots and remakes. Is if you have a passion for a story, there have been times, I will not lie, there have been times where I've thought, after I work on my own original stuff, there are a couple of classics I would like to do my own spin on or retell. Obviously, they would be, classics that are within copyright, because I like following the law. However, how long I can. That sounded shady. That's not what I meant. But it would be after my passion projects, my original stories, my things like that are out there, and I've had practice as a writer on top of an artist. Because if a lot of people don't know, I also really enjoy writing. To me, while art is my job now, creating digital art, illustrations and everything, one of my deepest hobbies and passions is writing. Is my stories, is world building and creating. And so that's why it's also something that I believe, I guess this will be where I'm leaving off. I know I said I'm leaving it off soon, but it's why I also think that a lot of my things wouldn't make good movies. And I'm a huge movie fan. Just because with how a lot of things are, I would want it to be animated. And that's a whole other ballpark. Is if you want an adult animated movie, it has to be some kind of raunchy comedy. Or else not a lot of people are going to see it. It is slowly changing. But it is very, very slow. So, all right. There. I've gone off. I got my vent out. I'm feeling better. But let me know how you guys feel about this. I do read the comments on these types of videos. I like seeing people's opinions and stories in there. I'll doodads on it. So, I make new videos every Wednesday, and as always, guys, I will. See you next time. Bye.